Okay, welcome to BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, and Mystics. We are in our brand new studio. Jesse's been working hard to get this set up. So this is our first broadcast in our new space. So welcome, everybody. I am here today with the lovely Leslie Marlar. Hi, Leslie.
Hello there.
So, Leslie, tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been doing this astrology thing?
I have been in astrology for over 40 years.
Wow.
And I took a course at a junior college after taking an astronomy course because they didn't have any more astronomy courses at a junior college. And I liked it so much that I just stayed in it. Mm-hmm. And the guy who taught me was in a group called the Church of Light, which used to go by the name Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor.
I love that name.
Isn't it great?
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have a book by that title that I need to find. Mm-hmm. So they're similar to the Golden Dawn and the Theosophical Society. And basically, somewhat close to your title, we study astrology, magic, and alchemy.
And I think that's why I like the title, because I love all of those things.
Well, it's wonderful. It's fascinating.
Yeah. And lux is light.
Yes.
Right? That's the root. And the Hermetic, is that Hermes?
That's according to Hermes, the Hermetic arts.
Okay.
Yes.
I've always been fascinated by alchemy and Hermes,
right.
and I've just always been drawn into that.
We associate Uranus with astrology, but before Uranus was discovered, we thought of it as being more mercurial, which of course is Hermes.
Right. Hermes is the messenger.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Mercury.
right. That's right.
Yeah. Yep. That's wonderful. I'm a sun sign Gemini, and
Yes.
isn't Mercury my ruling
Mercury is
planet?
the ruler for the sun sign. And I just ran into something the other day that I'd forgotten in one of my books, that you are in the Mercury planetary family. So that's your planetary family, the Mercurial group. And of course, the angel associated with Mercury is Raphael. So that's a fun thing to know.
And Raphael's the archangel of healing, correct?
I think so.
And I do healing for a living.
Yes.
So
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
pretty sure Raphael is the healing arts. So we have, to prepare for this broadcast, we asked for questions on Facebook. So we do have a bunch of those. But before we get to those, I'd like to just talk about astrology in general. You explained kind of how you got into it.
Right.
But if someone says, so what is this astrology thing?
Astrology is a theory. It's a theory of personality that says you're like the sky you were born under, and it's a theory of existence. It's a worldview, which says that things that happen in the sky are associated with things that happen on Earth. It's as though there's this constant connection. And of course, that shouldn't be true. What a strange idea that is. Mm-hmm. And yet, those who study it, like me, we do informal research all the time, and we see it working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're really critical, you've got to be very, very careful when you're trying to whether or not this is correct.
Right.
And I try to be very critical about it.
Yeah. We were talking before we started recording, and we're both kind of scholarly. We both like to study, and when we're not having fun, of course. And something on your website, I think someone had asked about, is this a science? And you said it's what astrology is proving the correlation between Earth events and sky events. And that's what science needs, is that correlation. They need this happens, then that happens. Right. And so is that kind of difficult to do with astrology?
Well, the whole idea of it, the question, is it a science, is kind of tricky, but the way to prove it is to prove the correlation. You've got to watch events, you've got to watch the sky, and they have to match up.
Yes.
And it is very doable. It's one thing to do it informally, it's another thing to do it in a formal type of situation. But you don't worry about proving the idea. You just prove the correlation, and that's valid.
And I we're going to show you the website on the video a little later, but I go to your website a lot. I get your newsletter too, and that you do a lot of that. You'll explain last month, this is the event that happened, and this is what was happening in the sky and why that led to that. So would you say astrology, when you were looking at the sky correlations and where the planets and were their relationships, right?
Yes.
Because there's tense relationships.
Yes.
And there's favorable relationships. Like, what are some of the tense relationships?
Well, tense relationships are oppositions, where you've got one body on one side of the sky and another on the other side. But those happen between complementary signs. So they have an upside to them. Because if you have something in Aries and also in Libra, then you understand both sides of an axis, which can be very beneficial. Now, the really tricky area is the squares.
Yeah, that's the tense.
The squares, those are very tense because they happen in signs that don't have a relationship with each other. And or they're in different quadruplicities. Do you love that word? There are some people...
That's four, quad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for example, the fixed signs, let me not put it that way, but they're very tense, 90 degrees, very difficult. They can force you into taking action, and as a result, you can succeed, but it's rather painful at times.
Yes.
So, they're very tense.
Yeah. So, I know when I first met you, I got a reading from you at the Book and Bead up in Merritt Island, Florida. And at the time, I didn't know my birth time. And you could still do a chart for me, but the time will give you certain aspects that are a little more specific. And we're going to go into that when I'm done with this explanation. But when I did get my time, came back to see you, and you could give me a really thorough look. And she has a laptop computer because it's very mathematical. Astrology there's stacks of books that an astrologer will carry around, and if you look, like, hold up your books, Leslie. She has a stack of books that she travels around with because they're charts. They're charts for the different years.
Actually, they're just... I'm
going to hold it up.
They're just planetary positions. So, and, if you can get into this stuff and get out of it without glasses, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's just all these little numbers.
And she has like two other little books over there. So it's very mathematical, and it's looking at different patterns. But another thing that Leslie does with her magic computer is then she can look at real time. Like what's happening now and where your chart kind of fits into what's happening now.
One of my all-time favorite things, but I have to say something first. I made a little mistake the other day. Squares happen within quadruplicities, not between different ones, but that's another story.
Okay.
So this was so exciting. When I was at Book and Bead, I got the idea to see what was happening in the sky when somebody would come over to see me. And there is almost always a relationship between something in the sky and something in the person's chart. So it may be the same rising sign. I mean, what are the odds on the person who just walked in having the same rising sign as what's rising in the east in the sky?
Right.
Or sometimes it's the moon sign of one and the rising sign of the other. And to me, that is an amazing... That's practically a proof of astrology right there.
Right.
And I'm continuing to record this, and I'm amassing more and more charts all the time.
Because the recording of it is what's needed. Like you said, the correlation is what science needs. But
that's right.
How many astrologers take the time to actually make those records? I don't know.
It's just a matter of thinking to do it.
Yeah. It's important.
And sometimes that's guidance. That might be one of your planetary guys helping you.
Yes, yeah.
But it's a big deal, and I'm always grateful when I actually get an idea like that to put something together.
Right. Well, we all get those mystical signals from our higher self or from our guides or whoever or wherever it's coming. That's the little nudge. And so taking that action. So
the who knows what of the collective unconscious.
That's right. That's right. So you mentioned rising sign.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and define what is the rising sign.
The rising sign is the sign that's rising in the east.
Okay.
You know, astrology.
When you're born.
Yes.
When you come out of your mother's
Or at any time.
Oh, okay.
If I had my phone out, I could see what the rising sign is right now.
So if someone's looking at their chart, they say, this is my birthday and this is the time I was born. The rising sign is what you find with that time.
Yes. And if you don't know the time, you don't know the rising sign.
Right.
Because you have no idea what the north, south, east, west orientation of the sky is.
Okay.
Because as you know, during the course of the day, every sign, each of the 12 signs, is rising for about 2 hours. So if you don't know the time, you don't know the rising sign. And you don't know what we call the houses. You don't know the orientation of the chart.
Right.
So you know the signs that the planets are in. You know the sun, usually the moon, not always if it changes sign that day.
Yes.
But when you have the time, it's wonderful.
Right. And some people, unfortunately, don't.
They don't.
And there can be some things you can still get out of astrology. It's just not going to be as thorough.
My mother never knew her time, had no idea. And one day I sat down and I looked at my chart, my brother's chart, and my father's chart. Had times on all of us. And I actually looked at how each chart described her, and I came up with her rising sign.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's theoretical, but it was pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah. And each sign does have a certain personality or qualities are a vibration or a resonance.
That's right.
And rising sign and ascendant are the same thing, correct?
Yes.
So if that was one of our questions.
First house, same thing. First house, ascendant, rising sign.
See, I didn't know that.
Because see, think about Easter. Think about Easter at sunrise.
Yeah.
That's a great way to think of the first house. It's the dawning of the person. That sign, it's personal to them. It describes them physically, and it shows some of their more obvious qualities. Whereas the moon sign is more your mental qualities, and the sun sign is your success and happiness, or what will take you to that.
No, that's a wonderful description. Most people, when they say, well, what sign are you? They say sun sign.
Sure.
That's just, in general, the general population know what their sun sign is. And you know what your sun sign is, whether you have your time or not.
Yeah, well, usually, unless you're on the cusp.
Okay.
Then it comes back to time.
Okay. If someone is on the cusp, can they generally have qualities from both signs?
Do you know, I've never figured it out. I've never really thought about it that much. I haven't really researched it. I usually give them both interpretations. I tend to think that if something is ending and something else is coming, that the thing that is coming may be a little bit more powerful. But I would explain it to them and let them see if it makes sense.
Right.
Plus also, if somebody is on the cusp for the sun sign, they might have other planets in either sign. So sometimes a person will say, I'm on the cusp, but I really feel like this. It might be other planets there. So astrology is the meaning of astronomy. And we're always doing astronomy. We're looking at charts, you know, we're looking at planets, and there's a lot of stuff to look at.
Yeah. Do the stars come into play?
You know what they do? In modern Western astrology, we don't use them that much, and it's a real shame because they do seem to have some impact. And I'll give you an example. Donald Trump has his ascendant very, very close to the star Regulus, which is the heart of the lion. And if you look at the way he, you know, people are always,
they're always like a lion.
They're always, he's got a mane.
He has the hair, yeah.
And they're always accusing him of being royal, and he is. Regulus is the royal star.
I know he's a Gemini sun
sign.
He is. Yeah.
He is.
But that Regulus gives him that royal feel.
And the stars are do I want to use the word treacherous? You have to be really careful. If you've got a star really close to something important in your chart, you really need to behave very well, because you can go up and then you can come back down.
Okay.
You have to be very careful.
It adds some intensity.
It adds all kinds of things.
Okay. We're going to have to go to a break, and then we're going to come back and maybe talk a little bit about what are some of the differences between Western astrology and maybe like Vedic astrology.
Absolutely.
Or the Chinese astrology.
Absolutely.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Okay, before we go to break, though, I just want to talk about my business, which is Med Healers. Besides being a podcast hostess, I am also, I have a business. It's a well-being and education center. I do various types of healing, but I have some classes coming up that are amazing. One is with Joanna Salerno. She's another Badass Alchemist Mystic, and we're doing a class that we've both created called Whole Body Ignition. And it's going to be looking at the 4 brains in our body. Yes, we have more than just one brain throughout our body, and we're going to look at balancing them and igniting those to help us raise our consciousness and do massive healing. And the other class that I'm creating is Medical Reiki, which is looking at an ancient healing tradition and making it more equipped to be entered into the medical field a little easier. So look for those. My website's medhealers.com. My number is 772-559-1993 if you want more information. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Space Coast Podcast, home of the greatest podcasts on the Space Coast. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or having your own show, email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com. Space Coast Podcast. Talk hard!
Hey friends, Steve Vitani here, your host of the Steve Talks 321 podcast show. We are in the studio broadcasting on Facebook Live every Tuesday at 7 p.m., talking about your favorite real estate topics or anything along the Space Coast. If you have an idea for a show, send in your request live on the air. If you miss the show, don't worry, we're on 24/7 all over the world on Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, iHeart, and many other major music podcast sites on the Space Coast Podcast channel. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks for listening to Steve Talks 321.
Okay, we're back. This is BAM, Badasses, Alchemists, and Mystics. I'm here with Leslie Marlar, and we're talking about all things astrology. And I love astrology. I'm so excited for this. So just to cover briefly, what are the differences? I know there's different schools of astrology,
yes,
but there's Western, there's the Vedic astrology, or some people call it ancient astrology. See, I'm a Taurus in ancient astrology and a Gemini
I hear
in
what
Western,
you're saying.
Technically. And then there's Chinese astrology.
Right.
So just what are the differences?
I know very little about Chinese astrology. And as somebody who's researching, I try to stay focused and not try to force different systems together.
Yes.
One of these days I will find out more about it. I know that Jupiter is very important to them. It takes Jupiter 12 years to go through all the signs. It's very nice that it's in a sign about a year. Mm-hmm. That's very important to them. I know that's part of their system.
Oh, okay.
So how can you not like, people who don't appreciate Jupiter?
Yes.
And of course the Vedic system is very old. It's part of Hinduism. Mm-hmm. Astrology is part of the religion. There's nothing more magical or complicated than Hinduism. I mean, you actually,
Tell me about
if you talk about astrology around somebody who's Indian, you actually get a little respect. It's really kind of fun.
Yeah,
it's
agree.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So, but with Hinduism, some of the things they do are just like us, and some of them are very different. So we are tropical and they are sidereal. In other words, they stay with the constellations. Let's put it that way. That's why you're a Taurus in their system and not a Gemini. You have to move everything back 20-some degrees, depending upon when you were born. So they're going to say that your planets are in different signs. They use the whole sign system for houses, which I just happen to use.
Okay.
But the ancient Greeks used that also. And they don't use Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, the invisible planets. They only use the visible planets, and they put a lot of emphasis on the nodes, Rahu and Ketu.
What is Rahu and Ketu?
That's the north and south node, which are the places where eclipses happen when there are new or full moons near them.
So is a node just an area in the sky?
It's the intersection of the Earth's orbit and the I've just forgotten.
Okay, it has to do where things intersect.
It's the intersection.
Okay,
yes,
but it's not a star or an actual body.
It's the intersection of orbits.
Okay,
And
I never knew that.
And why am I
that was
not?
my shoe, sorry.
Why am I not thinking about that? It's probably the intersection of the Earth's and Sun's orbit.
Okay.
Or something like that.
It's okay. So
Isn't
the
that
two
terrible?
No, because that's what happens when sometimes you just can't recall. But that makes sense to me. So astrology in general is it's ancient.
My business card says since 1750 BC.
Okay.
Because that's when the Babylonians were making star charts, and you can't have anything like modern astrology without first charting the sky.
Okay.
Since 1750 BC. It doesn't get any funnier than that.
Yes.
For an astrologer.
Yeah. So going back to the ascendant.
Yes.
You had said the sun sign is about business and
it's about success and happiness.
Okay.
Because it's like your heart.
Okay.
It's where your heart is.
All right.
The sun is the heart. The moon sign is more your mentality, not so much the mercurial aspects, but the more subtle aspects like your moods, what you just tend to be drawn to for some reason. And the ascendant is very much your the way you behave, your modus operandi, and your body. And there's a planet or two that represent each sun sign. That becomes your personal planet.
Oh, okay.
Personal planet. So your Pisces rising, you're going to have two. Jupiter and Neptune will be the planets in your chart that actually represent you. Whether or not you're looking at them in your birth chart or whether you're watching them move around the sky. So your Jupiter is in a different house and sign every year. And that shows you in 12 years' time, going all the way around your chart, coming in contact with every planet in it. And every one of those planets can bring you opportunities, which is really kind of a neat thing to know.
It is kind of a neat thing.
Somebody who's moon ruled, somebody who's Cancer rising, their moon's going to go around the chart every month.
Every month. Yeah.
I mean, talk about
that's
a
lot of
change, you know?
Yeah.
So
never heard it explained that way.
Well,
you're
it's really,
so full
it's
of
really
new
kind of fun.
perspectives.
It's really
It
marvelous.
is fun.
And the reason I love astrology is because nothing is accidental. Nothing is random. Everything is meaningful. And I think people need to have meaning. It's really good for them. People who lose that, they're not happy.
I think people are always looking for, the meaning of their life or the purpose of their life. And astrology is one of those tools that can give them a little bit of guidance, a little bit of guidance. I almost see like we're on this little ship, like going through the currents of life, and astrology can help navigate us through it, or just say, hey, see this wave coming, so you might want to steer this way.
That's right.
Or hey, you might want to turn this way towards this nice sunrise, right?
If Mars is doing something powerful in your chart, for example, Mars is going to go into Aries in July of this year, and it's going to stay there right up until 2021.
And what are the qualities of Mars?
Well, do you recall that Mars is the god of war?
Yes, I do.
Does that kind of give you a little...
Yes.
So, you know, it's a wonderful planet in terms of it being about muscle and action and strength and activity and drive.
Mm-hmm.
One of the
Very
best
masculine.
words.
Very
It is.
masculine.
Well, if you look in a woman's chart at Mars, it's the men she attracts. It's part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mars is going to go into Aries, and it's going to stay there for a long time. Well, it just so happens that Bernie Sanders has Scorpio rising.
Mm-hmm.
That means Mars is one of his personal planets. His own Mars is in Aries, right next to his moon. So are you hearing that something that's very important in him, his moon and his Mars, is in Aries, and Mars up in the sky is going to be there for a number of months? Makes me think he may end up being the candidate because he's going to be busy. Now, maybe he could have another heart attack, you know?
Right.
Because Mars is troublesome. So if I were counseling him, I'd say, you know, don't push yourself too hard. You know, don't slip on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make sure you take care of yourself and strengthen yourself prior to that period.
Right, because it looks favorable, but it can also be...
It's really...
It's a lot of energy.
It's hard to know. You know, it really is. The thing that we know is that it's going to be here and it's going to do this to him, and watch out and do the right things to make sure that you get something good out of it.
Right. You know, I'm thinking back when I was young, you know, Reagan was a president.
You are still young.
I'm a youngin'.
Shame on you.
I'm a youngin'. And I'll be young forever. I'm a Gemini. It's like Peter
You know,
Pan.
do you know what? Gemini and Aries are two very young signs.
We are. Yeah. I studied astrology a lot when I was in my 20s. I had like a stack of books like you do, and I was doing people's charts for them, you know, like amateur, but I really was into it. And I liked the fact that the beginning zodiac signs are like the Aries is like the newborn infant, and then as you go, and
that's right.
But I was going to say
first, second, and third degree emanation.
What's that?
It's kind of strange. The first 4 signs direct themselves. The next 4 signs, they direct themselves and are also directed by others. The last 4 signs tend to be directed by others.
Okay.
So your Pisces, well, I won't go into that, but
So
kind of an interesting notion.
So when you say the first 4 signs, like Aries starts the zodiac. That's sign number 1, and then Pisces ends the zodiac at sign number 12. So the categories you just said was going through the line there.
And they match up with the seasons. And of course, in Western astrology, we use the signs, not the constellations. And the first sign starts on the first day of spring. The seasons have not processed, and we keep the old system. But there's going to be a point where they're 180 degrees out, and that's going to be really strange. Do you know what I'm saying? The constellations and the signs are going to be so far out of whack that it makes me wonder what's going to happen at that point.
Right. Well, and when we're going to go to break, but when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about 2020, because there's a lot of things happening. I mean, every year things are happening.
That's true.
But some of the things that I was listening to, this is going to be a significant year in the sky events and apparently in Earth events as well. And I was just going to say, when I was young and Reagan was president, one thing I do remember is he had an astrologer, him and Nancy, that guided him through the presidency.
And I suspect what happened was after the assassination attempt, she probably got scared, called somebody in Hollywood and wanted him watched.
Probably.
I bet that's what did it.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Before we do go to break, hi everybody. We're gonna talk about Body by Brenda, and she is a fabulous woman, and she made some luxurious cream. I gave Leslie a little sample of it, so she gets to take that home with her. It's really clean. Like, there's no chemicals in this stuff. She uses therapeutic grade essential oils, and you literally could eat these, I guess, if you're stranded on a desert island somewhere and you had this with you. But they stay on your skin, keep it moisturized, and she has a whole line of really nice products at BrendaSwanson.com. So check it out, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Are you in the market for a new home? Perhaps you need to sell your old home and downsize or relocate. Hey there, my name is Jesse Hall with eXp Realty, and I offer professional real estate services right here on the Space Coast. Give me a call, 321-877-8737 for all of your real estate needs. Again, 321-877-8737 for all of your real estate needs. Buy, sell, invest with the best. Find out more at 321-buysellinvest.com.
Hey, it's Vinny with the Vinny Marino Podcast Show. I want you to join me Wednesday evenings as we tackle all the crazy headlines and uncover what's missing. Also, we will have exciting guests from our community who have seen it all and not afraid to spill the beans about it. And finally, we can't forget about Vinny's top rants and raves about traffic, restaurants, and events. Join us on Facebook as we go live and take you behind the scenes of each show and let you be a part of it. It's the Vinny Marino Podcast Show, raw, unedited talk all the time, straight to your dome. Live from the Space Coast Podcast Studios. Listen everywhere you find podcasts.
All right, we are back, and I am so excited and having a lot of fun here with Leslie Marlar. We're talking about one of my favorite subjects, that is badass alchemy and mysticism. And mystic is astrology. So we were talking about just kind of defining things.
Right.
Do you want to clarify you remember
I do,
the term?
I do. The nodes are the intersections of the Earth's orbit and the orbit of the ecliptic.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. She recalled it. Woohoo! Her brain's still working. So with 2020,
Okay.
we are in the year of 2020. And we have several of our questions that were typed in on our Facebook page were about that, about things, consciousness shifting right now, and what we can expect on our planet. What major alignments should we be ready for in 2020? There's also, my question was, I heard how many eclipses we were going to have this year.
We're going to talk about everything.
Okay, good.
You want me to start?
Let's go.
So we start with Saturn and Pluto. They're both in Capricorn. They've already been close to each other for about a year, and they're going to stay near each other in 2020.
What are the qualities of Saturn?
Saturn is a wonderful, disciplined, ambitious planet, practical, responsible, but many of the difficult events that we have are Saturn caused or corresponded to.
Okay.
So it is the difficult planet. It used to be called the major malefic. And it basically still is. But, that's getting into some of that's not the humanistic astrology that many of us are dealing with now.
Right.
So, and Saturn is near Pluto, which is extreme. So if you've got a difficult planet and an extreme planet next to each other, that can capture your attention. Now, they can still bring opportunities if they are in certain parts of the chart. But it's very important for Saturn to face reality, note if you have any problems, and address them. And then do two things. Do things that make you feel vital and strong, because it can drain you, and have some fun, even if it's goofy, silly fun, because it recreates you, because Saturn can drain you. Now, if I asked anybody what problem they were having and have had for a while, it would probably be Pluto and Saturn. In other words, if they told me and I had their chart, I would guess that I would find a correlation. Now, the nice news is that Jupiter went into Capricorn, where they are, in December, and will stay there for a year.
What are the qualities of Jupiter?
Jupiter's the good planet. It's the major benefic.
Oh.
Is that cute or what? I mean, you know, we've got some
we
interesting...
have like good versus evil coming into the same space.
With Jupiter moving in there, for some people, it could just cause more trouble, depending upon what they're up to. And for others, it could improve the situation. And, for example, if you're not looking for solutions, if you're not going to the people who might help with a situation, that could be very bad. So it's very important to note a problem, face it, and look for the help that's trying to find you.
What I've been teaching people lately is you have to do your inner work. You have to be working through the shadow stuff, looking at your fears, looking at your blocks actively. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're talking about. You got to face these things.
And you've actually got to have a plan of how to be happy.
And adding fun and happiness and joy in it.
Right.
It can't all be like grueling.
Well,
let's dive into the darkness.
It's very difficult in some situations, so I'm certainly not criticizing anybody.
Yes.
But it is really important to value happiness.
Yes.
Now, to make that even more interesting, 3rd and 4th week of February and March, Mars moves into Capricorn.
Ooh.
So let's just say it stirs everything up.
Because we just said Mars is that very masculine, high energy,
and it's
kind
stirring
of
it all up. So I'm wondering the reality of the coronavirus and where it's at. Is it starting to diminish? In other words, you know, there are different numbers that we get sometime.
Yes.
But, you know, the 3rd week of February is right around the corner.
Yeah.
And if you've got a problem, and, you know, help is coming into it, but something is going to stir everything up, that's really, I'll be learning as I watch to see if that makes everything worse.
Right. Now, what about coming out of February going into March?
Well,
is
some
there
additional things.
Is there hope, Leslie?
Well, honestly, we should all be on our best behavior during those 6 weeks. Because, you know, we're all different. We have different charts and we have different events, and we've got to be... It's so nice to know the positive behavior associated with each planet.
Okay.
So, for example, Pluto is cooperative at best and working with a group. At worst, it's like somebody in a gang where, you know, a whole group is doing something they shouldn't be doing. Saturn is responsible and practical. On the negative side, it's depressed and discouraged and cynical. That type of person has a different kind of event than the positive person. Jupiter is optimistic and wonderful. The negative side is excess or overconfidence. You know, like the person who says, I don't need to go to the doctor for that. Which, of course, is my favorite thing, but that's another story. And then, of course, Mars is stressed out and angry or active and not wasting their energy. So it helps to know the positive and negative side. Now, in addition to those guys, I already mentioned Mars in Aries, which when it goes in there in July, it's going to be squaring those Capricorn planets.
Oh, yeah.
So...
That's July of 2020.
But, you know, we're going to be having the political campaigns heating up.
Yes,
so
we are.
A lot of that is just going to be that.
Okay.
So when we look at each other and say, what on earth is going on? The answer will be Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter squaring Mars. That's the
Okay.
answer. Okay?
And you'll have your notebook making your
I'll
correlation
be
documents.
watching everything.
Yes.
Okay.
It should make for good TV.
Well, we'll see. In addition to that, Uranus went into Taurus.
Now,
Uranus went into Taurus.
what is Uranus qualities?
Uranus
positive and
is
negative?
another one of the planets that we can't see, except with a little bit of help. And it's, I love it because it's astrology, it's the sky, but it represents rather unexpected events. So it can really throw you. And it can also represent people who might be fascinating, but they're not necessarily reliable. So it is
Going into Taurus.
it is in a position where it's affecting Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Those folks need to watch out who they deal with and just expect the unexpected. They're going to be managing it. If it's in their sun signs, the sun is management, they're going to be managing it. So, I mean, it's the kind of thing I have to tell people, but the cure is to have good people around you and start managing things as they come in.
So what are those 4 signs again?
Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius.
Now, if someone has those as sun signs,
That-
really kind of watch, but anywhere in their chart?
Well, if they have something
Like
important
the
in
moon
it, yes.
or the ascendant
That's
or
right.
rising
That's
sign.
right.
Okay.
That's right.
Or make an appointment to come see you. So
That's right.
if you don't know what your chart is, Leslie's the person to see, so you know if what's coming for you.
And when we don't have the time, we do a solar house chart. We just put the sun in the east, and we make houses from the sun. And it's surprising how much sense they make.
So after that was July.
Well, I'm not going month to month because some of these things, that Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter thing's all year.
Okay.
And the Mars square is for months.
So
And the Uranus thing is this year, maybe
next year. I think I did hear that.
And then Neptune continues in Pisces for a long period of time.
Okay.
And I only want to bring up that Neptune is altered states, whether you're a Tibetan monk or a drug addict. And look what we're doing with drugs lately, and even with recreational marijuana. It's probably going to become more and more prevalent, and there could be some fallout for that in terms of people not really being there, as they should be. But that's Neptune and Pisces. Both Neptune and Pisces are about the same thing. And you said your Pisces rising, you have Neptune going through your first house. So that means you're attracting dreamers. And some of it can be very, very nice and beneficial, and you should be more imaginative, and you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah. That's the
You can.
positive part.
And let's see, I only noticed this the other day. I can't believe I forgot this. Venus is going to go into Gemini.
Oh, yeah.
Did
Venus
you know about that?
I did hear this. And Venus is
Venus is a
the
nice,
love
nice-
and relationships.
It's the love planet.
Yes.
It's the minor benefic. Jupiter's the major benefic. Venus is the minor. Saturn is the major malefic, and Mars is the minor.
Okay.
So you see how clear we make everything? Okay, Venus goes into Gemini in, don't tell me. It goes in April, and it's there in May.
See, this is why
And
she
it's
has her
there
books.
in June, and it's there in July. So it can be something nice because it's a nice planet. It really depends upon what it's in your chart. It's in my second house. That's the money house. I have a house for sale. I'll probably sell it. It's that simple.
So that planet is going to be in my sun sign at that period of time.
That sounds kind of nice.
Yeah, it does.
And it's
Sounds like a fun
it's
time.
a social planet.
Yeah.
Do you have any special things that you're planning?
I am.
Particularly travel. Gemini's a
I
travel
am.
sign.
I am
There you
planning.
go.
This is a travel year for me.
Wow.
And I want to meet interesting people. So it sounds
Yeah,
like we're
good.
Yeah.
Good.
And I am taking care of myself this year. I've made it a point and reaching out for help, which you've talked about a couple times, knowing when you do need to seek help from somebody.
Now, do we have time for this?
We're going to take one more break.
Okay, good.
And then we'll get, I know, I can't wait to hear what you're going to say. So before we go to the last break, we're going to put up on the screen Leslie's website, lesliemarlar.com. It's LeslieMarlar.com. She has quite a website. It is packed full of information. She will do regular blogs and newsletters and explain the previous month and all the events that happened and what was happening in the sky at that time. And she has just lots of links. I don't think I've ever seen that many drop downs on a website, but it is full of information. But you know what? For someone like me that's a scholar, I look at that website and I'm like, oh, I could spend a lot of time here.
I have my paper on Egyptian magic on there.
Oh, I got to look for that.
That was a huge project up at University of Maryland.
That's where I went to college.
Well,
Terrapins.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we have a couple of things in common.
What a hoot.
I know. What a hoot. Okay, so check out lesliemarlar.com and just peruse around. You're going to find lots of little golden nuggets of information.
Thank you.
And we will be back in just a minute.
All right. This is Doug Monda.
This is Karen Monda.
And Chris Hadaway.
And we're the host of Survive, the new podcast brought to you by the Survive First Foundation, a nonprofit organization assisting first responders and their families in need of mental health support due to the lifestyle of being a first responder. So, Chris, tell us what we're going to have.
We're coming to you from retired and active law enforcement officers as well as their spouses to discuss the responder life.
Don't forget, this is an unedited and raw podcast, so we need your interactive suggestions and advice to help us help others.
So find us live on our Survive First Facebook page and join in the conversation, or find us on demand on Spotify, iTunes, or anywhere you listen to podcasts from the Space Coast Podcast Network to you.
You're listening to Space Coast Podcast, home of the greatest podcasts on the Space Coast. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or having your own show, email us at spacecoastpodcast@hotmail.com.
Space Coast Podcast.
Talk hard!
Okay, we're back. This is Trisha Schmalhofer at BAM, Badass Alchemist Mystics. I want to do a shout out to some Facebook peeps that are watching. Hi, Jay. Hi, Joanna. Hi, Sarah. So glad that you are tuning in and watching us. And we wanted to talk about, we're trying to address the questions, and a lot of people were asking about, a lot of the quote-unquote stormy weather that's predicted for 2020, meaning just the currents of the stars and the planets. And just to recap what Leslie was saying is, for one, it depends on what your chart is saying, how rough it can be for you.
That's right.
So, do make an appointment. Even if you're not local, Leslie does phone readings. So you could be living internationally and get your chart looked at by Leslie.
Yes.
And but really doing your inner work, seeking help, having fun, were the three general themes of what's going to get us through.
Doing things that make you feel vital too.
Yeah, vitality.
Exercising.
Yeah.
It's the fountain of youth.
Yeah, and it could be different for different people.
That's true.
What exercising means.
That's right.
So you wanted to bring up 2021.
2021. Someone had mentioned something about 5D.
Yes.
And
5D consciousness. Yes, it's the ascension process.
If you think about the signs, Aquarius is a special sign in that it is intellectual, global, progressive, futuristic.
Yes.
And Jupiter's that good planet. And Jupiter will be there in 2021, with the exception of a few months. That could represent some nice things happening. Einstein was born with Jupiter in Aquarius, and he certainly had an impact on the world.
Oh, he sure did.
And there could be some good events then. Also, somebody might be born then who's going to do something good. So that's just something to be optimistic about. Now, Saturn is also going to be there in 21 and 22. But we shouldn't really think too badly about that. I mean, I won't go into some of the things that happened in the past with Saturn there, but it's always an opportunity if you're looking at it the right way. You know, it's responsible and it's practical, and it's putting ideas into form or into reality, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with that at all. This is a question that I want to bring up, and if it's going to take too long to answer, we can address it on another time. But when someone has a Saturn return,
yes,
what does that mean?
Then I love it. Well, it depends upon what age they are. You know, when you have your first one around 30, that might be when you get a pretty good idea of what your life's actually going to be like. Okay. In other words, reality hits home.
Is it a return to a sun sign, an ascendant sign?
Great question. It is the return of Saturn to where it was in the birth chart.
Oh.
Yes. In fact, every one of these bodies makes a return. The moon each month is in the moon sign you had when you were born. At your birthday, that's your sun return. And so we have returns with all of them except for Pluto and Neptune, which they move too slowly and we're gone before it happens.
Yes.
Although if you live long enough, you can have your Uranus return.
Okay.
But
did you want to go into the eclipses, or what were you looking at on your paper?
I do. Yes. There will be quite a few eclipses. You know, we have 2 eclipse seasons every year. So we'll have a solar and a lunar, or 6 months later, a solar and a lunar. Sometimes there are 3. It just depends upon the astronomy of where everything is and how close it is to those nodes. But they're going to be happening in Gemini, Sagittarius, and in Capricorn, Cancer. And I include the opposite sign because it affects that too. So just in general, Gemini, Sagittarius, about travel and communication. So we should be particularly mindful of doing those things. Capricorn, Cancer, it's about your public life versus your private life, your career versus your home life. So if we didn't know anything about anybody, we would just say, if we didn't know anything astrologically, we'd just say, make sure those areas are operating well this year.
Okay. Are there certain times of the year that we need to be aware of the 2, or is that just a general concern?
I'm being very general. I mean, I have the dates, but that might take a while to go through.
Okay. So those are the 2 areas that the eclipses will kind of affect. Right. Okay.
Right.
So one of the questions that was posted is, what's a recommendation on a good book that properly explains astrology? And that was Cheryl that posted that. And you did respond to her on Facebook, but I want you to talk about that.
Isabel Hickey's Astrology, the Cosmic Science.
And it's Hickey, Isabel Hickey. Okay. Astrology, the Cosmic Science.
Right. And it's just one of the many classics. We have many really good books about astrology. Stephen Forrest, Robert Hand, Evangeline Adams. I mean, there are so many. I got a library with all of them in it. The thing is, you always want to start out with a book that will explain what each sign and each planet means. You have to know what sun things are. You have to know what mercurial things are. In other words, you have to learn the set of things that come under our symbols.
Yes.
Because we're watching the symbols in the sky, and we're seeing that that set of things should be activated. So we're actually talking about sets of things, not just one thing.
Well, they're relationships too. It's how they're interacting with each other.
I know, it's just amazing. Sometimes you just have to get out paper and pencil and start writing
Yeah.
all the different possibilities.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't even talked about the house. Well, we mentioned the first house
Right,
a little
right,
bit, but
right.
there's just like there's 12 signs, and then there's all the planets. There's also the 12 houses.
Right, right. And the houses actually are very much like the signs. They get their meaning from the signs. But the first sign and the first house in most charts don't match up. When they do match up, it's called a natural chart. When you have Aries in the first house and they all follow suit, that's a natural chart, and it's really kind of fun for us because you can say everything twice, but you don't have to.
Right.
It's, in other words, it's more focused. I think,
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see a study on how people with natural charts do, because the chart looks focused. And, one would wonder if their lives are more focused.
Yeah. Have you come across people that have that? A
Natural charts, yeah, I always love it because it makes it easy.
I bet it does.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder what their
I
personality
like everything easy.
It's-
I mean, why did I pick this,
Yeah, it's like, did they decide when they were in their etheric body? Oh, we're gonna go right now, so it's all lined up, and is that who they are? So so the houses. So just someone that's just starting out. Those are some of the books you can look at, but the first house will have the quality of Aries because that's the first sign.
It's about identity.
Okay.
And Aries people are very me oriented. They're very identity oriented. It's a me sign, and that's just fine because they know who they are and they need to know who they are. And then of course Taurus is a money sign, and the second house is about money. Gemini is about thinking and talking, and that's what the third house is about. And Cancer is about home and family. That's what the fourth house is about. Leo is about young love, having fun, being creative, and that's what the fifth house and Leo are about the same things. Virgo, work and health, and that's the sixth house. And then you get into Libra, which is relationships, and the seventh house is about that. So you've got the first house, which is you. The opposite house is about other people. It's really nice. All the opposite houses and signs have important relationships with each other.
Yeah, and you've mentioned that a couple times. Let's keep going. What's the eighth house?
Scorpio is the eighth house, and that's other people's money.
Oh.
Scorpio and the eighth house. It's
people's
actually
money.
complex money like alimony, government money, taxes, lending and borrowing. It's money, but there's somebody else involved. Ninth house is a great house. The Greeks used to call it God because it's about seeking the divine. It's Jupiter's house, Sagittarius, the ninth house. They're both about seeking the divine, but also long-distance travel and higher education. And then the 10th house is like Capricorn. It's about climbing the ladder and trying to achieve honors, which is a fine, that's where we have all those planets in Capricorn. There are people who are going to achieve honors during this situation because of those planets.
During 2020.
That's
yeah,
right.
all
Absolutely.
of that we were
and
talking
last
about.
year also. And then Aquarius and the 11th house, they're similar. They're futuristic, and they're about the future and about hope and about friends. And the Greeks used to say that the 11th house was the good daemon. The good daemon, yes. And then you get into the 12th house, and that was the bad daemon.
Right.
So not too many people talk about that anymore because we don't want to scare people. But the 12th house is about research and mysteries. Pisces, 12th house,
Yes.
similar thing. And, it can be about disappointments and restrictions. So the Queen has no planets in the 12th house, but Harry does.
Oh, so Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth, she's Capricorn rising. She has Saturn at the very top of the chart. She's elevated. Harry has the same thing. Capricorn rising, Saturn at the very top of the chart. But she has no planets in the 12th house, and he does. And, he had sorrow because of his mother, and it seems to be affecting the way he's going to live.
Mm-hmm.
See how, I mean, is that cool or what?
It's super cool.
And we're constantly discovering in astrology.
Yeah.
You know?
And looking for those correlations.
You see the news, you run to the computer.
Yes.
It's incredible.
I am so sad to say we're out of time. So I just have loved having you on, Leslie.
I've been happy to be here.
Yes.
Very happy. And you ask great questions.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me.
You do.
And so just before we leave, say again how people can get in touch with you if they want a reading or if they want their charts.
They can see my email on the website, which is leslie.marlar@gmail.com.
Okay. And again, her website is lesliemarlar.com.
That's right.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you next time on BAM, Badass Alchemist Mystics. Bye-bye.